Yo, what's up YouTube? If you play on PrizePicks or Underdog Fantasy, you gotta know about correlation, okay? This is the most important, most profitable strategy on PrizePicks and Underdog, which are two platforms I've been pretty successful on so far this year, okay? So the key to understanding why correlation is so profitable on these platforms is just understanding how these platforms work. So PrizePicks, Underdog Fantasy, what is unique about them is they have fixed payouts. So what I mean by that is any 3-pick entry you make on Underdog Fantasy. Doesn't matter if you have baseball picks, soccer, football, whatever. You're always going to be getting a 6x payout for any 3 picks. So as a simple example, let's say I really like Davante Adams to go over in receiving yards, and I want to pair that with Jimmy G to go over, right? They're both on the same team. Jimmy G is the quarterback, Davante Adams is the wide receiver. So if Jimmy G goes over in passing yards, then it's a lot more likely that Davante Adams is going to go over in receiving yards, right? So if you pair these 3 picks together, Underdog would be giving you a 6x payout, and 2 of those plays would be called positively correlated, Jimmy G and Davante Adams. If Jimmy G has a good game and he goes over in passing yards, it's more likely that Adams is going to go over. So correlation, it always applies to picks on the same game. Now, on the other hand, what you definitely wouldn't want to take, because these are negatively correlated, is Jimmy G to go over and Davante Adams to go under. That would make no sense, right? Underdog Fantasy is giving you the same 6x payout if you take Jimmy G and Adams both to go over, or if you take Jimmy G under and Adams over, which obviously doesn't make any sense to do. So that's just a quick example, but in this video, I'm gonna be running you through how you can calculate correlation. Other examples, like obviously quarterback to go over, wide receiver to go over, that makes a lot of sense. If you wanna take Mahomes over, take Kelsey's over, but there's other, sports, and thinking about correlation and how you can use correlation to your advantage when playing on PrizePicks, Underdog Fantasy, for soccer, all the other sports. That's what we're going to discuss in this video. So let's get into it. So you can see Underdog Fantasy right here. And again, fixed payouts. I take Jimmy G over or under, whatever. This doesn't change. You're always getting a 6x payout for a 3-pick entry. This makes Underdog Fantasy as well as PrizePicks very, very unique, right? So compare this to a traditional sports book. So if we look at FanDuel Sportsbook, this is their little same game parlay tab where you can make parlays from the same game. Is you may be thinking, oh, I'll just do this on FanDuel. Nope, not possible. So imagine if I created a 2-leg parlay, Jimmy G under and Davante Adams over. This parlay comes out to plus 378 odds on FanDuel. So I'm betting 100 to win 378.56 in profit. Now you'll notice FanDuel has the same odds on Jimmy G's over and his under, right? Both are priced at minus 110 odds. But if I switch from the under to the over, FanDuel drastically reduces the payout to plus 156 odds. So FanDuel is pricing in correlation. If I take a quarterback to go over and the receiver to go over, these plays are positively correlated. So FanDuel drastically reduces the payout to plus 156 odds. Whereas if I take over and under, negatively correlated play, they give me plus 378. So positive correlation, when you're looking at the same game parlay tab on FanDuel, positive correlation is when the odds get worse, right? FanDuel is giving us a worse payout, even though the odds are the same, right? On Jimmy G, his over and his under are both at minus 110 odds. If I switch from the under to the over, my parlay goes from plus 378 to plus 156. So FanDuel is giving me a lot worse of a payout for both of the overs paired together because these plays are positively correlated. Now, what's interesting is you can kind of look at correlation for a bunch of different plays. So if I take Jimmy G over and Jordan Love over, FanDuel gives me plus 218 for this little 2-pick same game parlay if we get rid of Adams. Now, on the other hand, if I take Jimmy G's over and Jordan Love's under, they're giving me a better payout than if I take both overs together. So what does this mean? This means taking quarterbacks on opposing teams both to go over is positively correlated, right? FanDuel, They have the same odds on Jordan Love, his over and his under. Both are minus 110. But if I switch from the under to the over, they reduce the payout to plus 218, which means these plays are positively correlated. Although it's less correlated, you're going to see the jump is not as big as the jump we just saw for Adams plus Garoppolo, but this jump is still there, right? So in other words, what you don't want to do on a fixed payout platform like Underdog Fantasy is what you don't want to do is you obviously don't want to play negatively correlated things, is if you want to take Jimmy G's under, you should try to find a spot to take Jordan Love's under. These plays are positively correlated. Quarterbacks going the same direction are positively correlated. Granted, less so than receiver plus quarterback, but you get the point, is you can kind of look at FanDuel, and when you see their payout drop, when you select two picks from the same game, if the odds are the same on the over and the under, that means those plays are positively correlated. So you may be thinking like, wow, it's wild that these platforms like Underdog and PrizePicks, they don't bake in correlation. I can take Jimmy G over and his main receiver, Davante Adams, over in receiving yards, and they're not going to change the payout. And yes, it's true, and yes, it's wild. However, there are some restrictions. So if you look at PrizePicks, similar logic, maybe you were thinking, oh, I'll take Jimmy G under in passing touchdowns and Davante Adams under in receiving touchdowns. That would make sense to pair together, right? Davante Adams is the main receiver for Jimmy G. So if Jimmy G goes under in passing touchdowns, it's more likely that Davante Adams will go under. However, PrizePicks blocks it. You can see they give you like a little error alert that says you can't place this entry because you have touchdown props on the QB and the receiver. So you need to be a little creative about correlation because PrizePicks and Underdog will try to block certain types of slips. So correlation is a super profitable strategy on PrizePicks and Underdog. Again, it's a little annoying that they, try to block certain types of your slips. But correlation can also be applied to other sports. So think about the NHL or soccer. If you want to take a goalie to go over in saves, then it probably makes sense to take players on the opposing team to go over in shots. For example, if you think Messi's going to have a great game and he's going to take a lot of shots, it makes sense to try to find a good play or some value on the opposing goalie to go over in saves. So correlation is, pretty clear cut for some sports. For example, in the NFL, right? Take a player over in passing yards, Jimmy G. Take his main receiver, Davante Adams, over in receiving yards. That's pretty clear. But in some other sports, it's not as clear. So I've looked through the data for you. So for example, in League of Legends, if you go through all the historical data, which I've done, you're going to see players on the same team are positively correlated to go the same direction. So if you take a player to go over, you want to find spots with value, ideally, on his teammate to also go over, or both to go under, right? Correlation goes both directions. So if you take Jimmy G's over, you probably want to take Adams over. If you take Jimmy G's under, you probably want to take Adams to go under. So it's the same thing in League of Legends. So in League of Legends, kind of random sport, I'm aware of that, but taking two players on the same team both to go over is positively correlated. I've done that a ton of times on PrizePicks and had some good success. Similarly, taking players on the same team both to go under. Now, it gets a little more complicated for players on opposing teams. Here, you want to take one guy to go over, a player on the opposing team to go under in League of Legends, okay? So that's positively correlated as well. You take players on opposing teams to go opposite directions, one over, one under. So long story short, I could sit here all day giving you examples of positively correlated, slips. But if you have any questions about correlation, you can drop them below. I'm happy to explain to you, what outcomes may be positively correlated or negatively correlated, right? So long story short, correlation is a big advantage on PrizePicks and Underdog Fantasy, but you also should be a little careful with it, right? You definitely don't want to take Jimmy G over, Davante Adams under. So when you're playing picks on the same game, you just want to think a little bit about the correlation of your slip. To make it clear, correlation's a big advantage, but I'm not saying go take every single quarterback's over and his wide receivers over. That's not what I'm saying. It's more when you're building your slips on PrizePicks and Underdog Fantasy, ideally, correlation helps you zone in on the best possible things to pair together. So the ODS Jam Fantasy Optimizer, which you can see right here, is the main tool that I use to find good plays on PrizePicks and Underdog, all it does is, kind of scan these tens of thousands of lines on PrizePicks and Underdog and point out value. So you're going to see the first play it's recommending is Anders Carlson under 1.5 field goals. So I have this selected in my little PrizePicks entry. Okay, now the reason this is a good play on PrizePicks is you're going to notice all the sports books, this is Fliff, have Anders Carlson heavily favored to go under, right? He's a minus 185 favorite to go under. So that's really, how you find value. This is basic PrizePicks strategy. PrizePicks is a platform that doesn't change your payout. You can see right here, if I take him over or under, I'm getting the same payout. So what you want to do is compare the lines on PrizePicks to those on the sports books and find spots where books have an under really heavily favored. In this case, it's Anders Carlson is heavily favored to go under 1.5 field goals. So this is a sharp pick on PrizePicks. But the benefit here is I can find some correlated plays. So you can see ODS Jam is also recommending we take Jordan Love under 3.5 rushing attempts. So this is another play with value. You'll notice right here, Fliff, once again, has his under really heavily favored, so that would be the sharp pick to go with. That's the favored side, so that's what we want to go with on PrizePicks. But the added benefit here is these plays are also positively correlated, right? If the Packers have the ball less, then Jordan Love is probably more likely to go under 3.5 rushing attempts, and Anders Carlson is more likely to go under in field goals. Similarly, I just explained League of Legends correlation is if you're taking one player to go over. So here I have Glory over 4. You can see that's a pick I have selected on PrizePicks. His opponent is Adam on BDS. And you're going to see ODS Jam is recommending 2 League of Legends plays, players on opposing teams to go opposite directions. So those plays are also positively correlated. If Glory goes over, then Adam is more likely to go under. So not only do both of these picks have really good value, Glory and Adam, but they're also positively correlated. So maybe I skip over this play if I was only deciding between Sonny Gray and Adam. Again, typically I just go down the list and take the highest percentage chance to win picks using the ODS Jam Fantasy Optimizer. But if I can find plays in the same game with positive correlation, like Glory and Adam here, again, these plays are positively correlated. One player to go over, a player on the opposing team in League of Legends to go under, in map 1-2, these plays are positively correlated. So I kind of use this optimizer. I look for plays in the same game that are positively correlated, and that's a way that you can kind of increase your ROI on PrizePicks using the ODS Jam Fantasy Optimizer. This tool is a great starting point. It scans the entire market and shows you, hey, Jordan Love is heavily favored to go under 3.5 rushing attempts, so that's a really good pick on PrizePicks, which is why I have it selected, right? But what it's not going to do is show you correlation, so you can kind of look through and find plays ideally that are positively correlated. So I hope this video kind of breaking down correlation, how to use correlation to your advantage and beat PrizePicks and Underdog Fantasy. I hope it was helpful, but if you have any other questions, feel free to comment your questions below. I'm happy to answer, I'm happy to help out, and thanks so much for your time.